video and your audio off. We have with us enough members to make a quorum, so why don't I get the ball started. So if you could just say present when I call out your name. Sally Dale.
Present.
I Ching Scott.
Unstable, it says.
Okay.
Cheryl Wolf.
Present.
And Tia Jerris is, I think, present. And then we also have with us our recording secretary, Nancy Polcari, town planner, Brian Skelly, and WinCam. So why don't we jump right into our agenda? Why don't we, why don't we have our reappointment for Ellen Spencer? I'm sure she would love to hear about our updates, but she would probably prefer to enjoy the rest of her evening. So,
oh no, I'll be tuning in. I'll be tuning into the rest of it too.
okay, well, why don't we do this since I just said it? So, the Design Review Committee has members appointed by various boards in town, and the planning board appoints, I believe, a couple seats. And so, at the moment, Ellen is you are an incumbent on the board and you wish to be reappointed. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself for everyone out in TV land? And,
Sure. And I know that there's a number of new members of the planning board who I've not met other than seeing them virtually. My name is Ellen Spencer. I have been on design review. I can't remember how long. It's between 10 and 15 years, probably closer to 15. So with the recent kind of resignation of David Storygard, I'm now the second longest serving member on the committee. And my background is in art history and interior design. Although I'm retired now, and I've had a lifelong interest in the history of Winchester and in particular its built environment. And in my time on the planning board, on the design review committee, the committee function has changed quite a bit. When I first joined, pretty much what we did was review signage, which we still do. But our role has expanded and changed over the years, especially with the changes in the zoning bylaws and the creation of the new CBD, so that we really do now have more of a voice in advising planning board and on certain things, and our minutes go both now to ZBA too for special permit and site plan review. So that's been really interesting and exciting, and makes me want to keep doing this. So I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yep. So first off, thanks for showing up tonight. And I think the planning board really does appreciate the time and thought that the Design Review Committee puts into their work and the memos they send us. So thank you very much for that. So I will open it up to the board. Anyone have any questions? If not, then I would welcome a motion. Oh, Brian has a question. He's not on the board.
I'm not, yeah, I was gonna say, one, I'm not on the board, and number two, it's not a question. And I just want basically to say that not only is the town lucky to have someone like Ellen just simply to reside in here, to be honest, I want to just show my gratitude to the amount of time and effort and her voice to the really is just been just, I don't know, I'm thankful for what you've done, Ellen, and I just wanted to make that note. And back to you, Tia.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate
second that. That's what boards do, right? I second that.
Thanks.
Excellent.
So Brian has stolen everyone's thunder, I think, but that's okay. Any questions for Ellen about anything? Nobody. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Yi-Ching.
Thank you so much for your service, Ellen. I was wondering what your biggest challenges on the committee might be. I'm just curious. I've never really actually sat in on any of the meetings. So, what are some things that you foresee coming up, or what the challenges that you guys have had in the past couple of years?
Well, the biggest challenge right now is what's in front of you, I would say, with the 10 Converse Place. But I think the biggest challenge really has been, it started before this project, with the new CBD rules and regs, and having big projects now start to come before the town. Before this, there was the Fells hardware project, which I'm not sure what the status of that is right now, but very complicated, and real to kind of test. These are test cases, really for the new bylaws and regulations, and everyone I think is trying to figure out how, going by what's been written, which is all new to all of us, how this is actually playing out in real time, in real life. What are the things we might in the future want to tweak about the process versus, it's all been a very, very big learning experience for every one of us on DRC, because we've never had that kind of responsibility before for our input, and also to make a difference. So I would say in the last few years, that's been the biggest change. And I don't think it's bad. I just think there's some growing pains, and it's a real learning curve.
Yeah. I need to make it to one of your meetings. Thank you so much for the briefs.
We've gone back on Zoom. We were briefly off it, so you're very welcome to attend.
I just want to note that Kurt Spring, our I want to say the last planning board member, but that doesn't sound quite right. Has joined us. Kurt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey guys,
Excellent.
sorry
Thank
for being
you.
a little late.
No problem. So Kurt is present. So to keep us on schedule, can I ask for a motion to reappoint Ellen Spencer as the planning board representative to the design review committee?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Cheryl Wolf,
Aye.
Sally Dale,
Aye.
Yi-Ching,
Aye.
Kurt Spring,
Aye.
and Dia Jury says aye. Welcome back to the design review committee. You've been gone for so long.
Well, now it can flow uninterrupted because we have our meeting tomorrow night. So
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen.
So moving on to our agenda, we have meeting minutes, and then we have updates. So why don't we get the meeting minutes out of the way first? Brian, if you could display those for us.
Yep, just give me a sec.
And we do have our hearing for 10 Converse is opening up again at 7:15. So
Sorry, they were not in they're in the specific distribution packet. I'm gonna need another 30 seconds.
So while Brian's doing that, I can give a really quick update on 654 Main Street, also known as the Fells Hardware Project. And as you may know, there was a appeal filed against the planning board's decision, and that is still in discovery. So it's in land court, and it is still undergoing discovery. I just had to sign a couple of papers just over the weekend. So that's the update on that.
I'm so sorry, but I do not have the minutes. I have everything in the packet except for the minutes handy.
Okay, well, I have them in my packet. Shall I share?
Go right ahead.
Okie dokie. Okay. Oops, let me go to the right directory. Oops. Ah, come on, just go down one page. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
You might zoom in. There you go. That's very helpful.
Okay, so our first set of minutes is for Tuesday, January the 4th. Are there any amendments to this?
I just have a couple.
Go right ahead.
Okay, page 3 at the top, bullet points.
Okay.
It says timing of a physical model is a question and would use a 20-foot scale. I think I think it's 1 to 20. So a 1 to 20 scale, not a 20.
Yes. Okay.
And then it's the following where it says, Mr. Tebenkin, it says he also noted that the Eversource has indicated they need a room with a 15-foot height for their transformers currently reviewing, may need to raise the height of the building. I thought he meant the raise just floor to floor of that particular area, but that is what I recall, not the entire height. Can anybody else recall that? I don't.
Yeah, what I remember, Iching, is that it was they need a room with a 16-foot height, not 15, and that the entire level 1, first floor of the building would therefore have a floor to ceiling, well, have a floor to floor height of 16 feet.
Right. So
that
raising the
raised the
height of the
entire
building
building by
seems
2
to
feet.
indicate that the entire building goes up, right?
Yeah,
So
well, according to the
clarify
plans,
that.
it does go up 2 feet, the entire structure.
Because of the transformer?
That's my interpretation.
Mine as well. That Sally's right on.
Okay, so the change here might be to change the 15 to a 16, but to retain changing the height of the building. Is that what I'm getting? 2 out of 3 voted that way?
My indication that it may need to raise the height of the building by 2 feet. Also, the applicants are here if we want to ask them directly.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Eversource requirement is 15-foot clear within the transformer room, which we are accommodating with a 16-foot floor-to-floor height across the entire building.
That's what I thought.
Okay, and would that redesign did that change the total height of the building, or did you just when you did that?
What date are these notes from?
Oh yeah, this is from the
January 4th.
January
January
4th.
4th. So I'd have to go back and look, but I think we were at 62 feet at the parapet, and now we're at 62 feet for the roof.
Okay, so
with
there
a
was
2-foot parapet. So there was that change.
there was a height.
Yep.
Okay, so the change would be a 16-foot height. I think is the only change that's required on this sentence.
Yeah.
And it would raise the height of the building
Yes.
by 2 feet.
So this is correct.
Not may need to.
Did.
David just said it. And I'm just repeating what he said, but it sounded like, yeah.
I agree with you, but at the time, I think it was a may, not a will.
Correct.
Right. I agree with that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So
And the 15-foot height is actually correct for what's the required clear space within the room, which is what this note is indicating.
okay, so they need a room with 15 feet clear space.
Correct.
Okay, so we could change the word height to clear space,
Sure.
and I think that we are technically correct as of a month ago,
Yep.
which is all we care about at the moment. Any other changes?
I have a question on page 3.
Okay.
It is under public comments. Ms. Duvall
Yep.
And she asked if the digital model can be manipulative to give different views from different locations. And I believe that she means interactive. And I wonder if anybody present,
I think
Yeah,
manipulative is the right word in this case.
or manipulated.
or manipulable.
Sure.
mean,
I
don't
think
that-
it's,
I don't think the model is being manipulative.
okay, why don't we change this to manipulable? If you would make a note of that, Sherry, God, for some reason, I'm just giving the wrong names this evening. My apologies. Sally, if you would please make a note of that and send that off to Nancy.
I will do
Any,
so.
any other, edits?
I have a question on page 4.
Okay,
And it's at the top of page 4, the continuation of item number 4, the Washington Swanton Street request for proposal that starts on page 3.
yep,
And the last bullet before continued discussion with Mr. Serbier says, within a 40B project, a 10-story building would be considered acceptable. And I guess that is, I don't know, I was just surprised to read that. I don't know where that came from or what that means.
I'm a little surprised at that. I mean, it certainly would be possible. I don't know who would accept that, but I think it's certainly within the realm of what a 40B can do.
Does anyone remember what that who made that statement and what they might have meant?
I do not. Let me see if there's something at the bottom. I think that I recall we were comparing it to River Street, which is a 6-story building. But I don't recall a 10-story. I would have to say that since nobody remembers really what happened, the only way to proceed with this is to mark it as for further research, and then we would have to approve these minutes at a later date. So why don't we do that? Are there any other questions about this?
Yeah, one of Nancy or I will review the recording.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Get to the bottom of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so any other changes for this set of minutes?
And I just suggest controllable instead of manipulable, which is just, I think, the spirit of.
Yeah, sure. We can use controllable. Sally, you own that particular part of.
Well, yeah, just because manipulable means that you could actually like change it as opposed to just.
Right.
It's
Well,
it's the viewing that's that you can.
Yeah, it's the model. The view of the model can be changed or something like that. Yeah.
That's why I had interactive. You could,
So why don't we go with controllable or interactive, and then we'll bring this back for another go. And so
I
why don't?
defer to David Hassine on which of those 2 words he would like.
Well, you're the one making the request for.
I love it.
amendment, Sally.
I'd say interactive and controllable.
Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
There we go.
Okay.
As my niece says, both can be right.
Yes. Okay. So we got through that, but we can't vote on it
Nope.
because we have a little research. So that is the end of that's the end of our minutes that we need to review. Just the one. Very quickly, we are 5 minutes over. Brian, did you have any updates you wanted to present?
The only thing, and I know only because this was requested, an update related to SEB, which is the developer that is currently building 416 Cambridge Street and also 19 to 35 River Street, the 240B rental developments in town. That are mixed income with affordable and market rate. We've been asked to comment, or not necessarily comment, but just mention it publicly, is that Mass Housing has been able to bar him from applying for any further affordable housing development projects at this time. So there's been communication. This was related to an issue that he, a development in Wellesley, and Mass Housing has essentially said he can't apply for any new projects. The town has talked I've talked with Mass Housing, and they've assured me that all the current projects are currently being reviewed, but at the moment, this does not affect any project in town, and specifically the River Street project or the Cambridge Street project. So that's all I wanted to say in terms of the updates. Back to you, Dan.
Okay, thanks. I think we can reopen or continue our 10 Converse Place hearing. This is for the development by Ed Miliori at 10 Converse Place. When last we left off a couple weeks ago, the board had made, do I have to stop sharing or you grabbed it? Okay, excellent. Yeah, so when we last left off, the board had discussed some possible changes, and Ed Miliori went off and you guys had a couple of weeks to tweak. And so what I would love to do is for you guys to give us a quick, let's say a 10-minute overview of what your changes are. Then at that point, I would like to, do we have Brian, is Philip Chen with us this evening yet?
Yes, he is. Sorry, go for it, Phil. Hi.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hi, Philip.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to give the co-host over to Dylan. Is that correct? Is my guess for the screen, or I actually have it ready as well.
Yeah, start with me. I'm going to run through the PDF, and then Dylan will take over to control and interact with the 3D model.
Okay, great.
So before we get to that, I just want to lay out what I'm hoping for our schedule for this hearing. And so it is, Ed Miliori does a brief presentation. Philip comes in and gives us his view of where things stand. I think at that point the board can segue into discussions of where we have about, we're aiming for a decision around March the 8th. So the question the board will be looking at are, the big question is the PUD, what are the concerns, what needs to be mediated, and then a discussion with Philip about where he feels the design is and where it could go in response to some of the board's concerns. So that's what I'm hoping we can finish up tonight, and then next time we meet, we can go into more details as to how we handle the concerns and any possible conditions. So go ahead, Ed Miliori. Oh, Brian has his finger up.
Just one quick thing, and this is just about schedule and timing, is that like you said, somewhere around March 1st to March 8th, and just to put a little more detail in there is that the applicants are going to boards and committees, design review, historical commission, housing partnership board, and I'm not sure if they are going to be going to the disability access commission, or if there will be a memo from them as well, but they certainly have been notified. So that will be happening over the month of February, and then we will, the planning board will be able to review those comments from all those boards and committees at that time.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Brian. And now we will turn it over with hopefully no further ado.
Ian, did you want to start with anything, or just let me jump in?
No, I think the less I hear from me, the better. So David, take it away. Thank you.
Okay. So let me share screen. Okay. So thank you, Brian, and members of the board. We are back after 2 weeks. We've had 2 follow-up meetings with Brian and Philip. So we made a lot of progress. You've seen the draft that we sent out on Friday. There's just a few more materials that we've added to the presentation. Essentially, we'll quickly go through the key feedback, talk about the design updates, and then at the end, Dylan's going to jump on and show you 3D massing model that we've assembled. The intent with this is that after we get any feedback tonight or confirmation of any of the options we're looking at, we'll incorporate that into the model, and then by the end of the week, provide everyone with a link to access it and a PDF of instructions on how to do that. So Dylan can walk through that. So this you've seen in the draft that we sent Friday, but just quickly from the last meeting and with our conversations with Philip and Brian, we've heard the preference for the northwest corner, which was the simple entry canopy with a Juliet balcony above. Provide a second commercial space entrance at the northeast corner of the building for commercial space A, the one along Mount Vernon. The radius corners at the northeast and southeast, it was acknowledged that these help mitigate the building massing. There was a request to create continuity of the 3-story reading at the building corners to reinforce the village scale and carry that reading, connecting both Mount Vernon and the east facade facing Town Hall around to the south facade facing the pond. We were asked to refine the articulation of the east facade to simplify it a bit while emphasizing the rhythm of the townhouse volumes and the setbacks that were helping to mitigate the building height. We were asked to explore the shape of the 5th floor dormer volumes to mitigate the boxiness and celebrate the meeting of building and sky, thinking about the details there. And then there was a preference expressed for the 3-story curved bay at the southwest corner. So these are all things we've incorporated into the plan. Briefly, Copley Wolf has made a pass at the landscape plan. Sean Sanger and John Copley are both here, so they can step in and comment on this if you have any questions about it. But this is basically a refinement based on the revised building footprint. And there's still, of course, details and coordination to do here, but continuing the idea of the large outdoor space, incorporating steps down to the pond based on some feedback we heard, minimizing the connection to the live work units on the east side, and then retaining the existing access to Converse Place, but thinking about improving the situation there, make it better for pedestrians. The floor plans, we have done further development. I won't go through these in detail, but just a few key points. Currently, we're at approximately 56 spaces. We're still verifying how many of these open spaces we need for maneuvering. So verifying that with one of the parking vendors, but we think it's at least 56 at this point. So currently more than one per unit. At the ground floor, we have incorporated an amenity at this floor now facing the pond, just taking a small amount of facade space there. Seemed to make sense to us and to the developers to put it here rather than taking valuable space on an upper floor. We've now simplified the designation of units. We're eliminating the 1+, 2+ designations, which were causing some confusion. So we still have 1-bedrooms with a sort of flexible room in the back that could be a study or an exercise room or additional storage in some of these units, but we're defining 1-bedrooms as all 1-bedrooms, all 2-bedrooms as 2-bedrooms. So these unit types and unit numbers for easier reference are now indicated on the plans. And then this is an updated unit count, and we are now at 43 units, and this breaks down both by floor running across and by unit type running down this column. Now for the massing model, we have included the views that you saw last time, and I'll run through these quickly. Whoops. So this is what you'll see at the end. We can bring you into this view and then manipulate, rotate the model, get down at the street level, walk around the street. And we have added additional street level views so that, I guess two reasons for this. One is There were questions raised about the visibility of the roof screen. So we wanted to show some key views both from near and then zooming in far. So from under the bridge at the Rotary and then further down to see what is visible and how these views, how the setbacks change. And this is, again, is something, if you get into the massing model, when we send you the link, you'll be able to experience more clearly. This is the view from Washington Street looking across the parking lot, which you saw last time. And then this is the view around the corner on Mount Vernon, a little bit further away from the standard closer up rendered view you've been seeing. This is from the intersection of Mystic Valley Parkway and Washington Street, and then turning down Mystic Valley Parkway. One thing to note about this model is the landscape is not up to a level of perfection here. There's lots of trees missing. In reality, this view is not what you would see. You'd be looking through trees at this point. So this is really to understand the building massing relative to other buildings in town, but it is not clearly not clearly reflecting the existing landscape or even the landscape design yet. This is a view from Mystic Valley Parkway looking north, and then a view at the intersection of Main Street. So this is a view you've seen before, and we start flipping then to the renderings. So these renderings have been upgraded. I think we showed you one of these last time. We've now incorporated Enscape, this Enscape technique, which gives a much more photorealistic rendering into these, all of the views. And just a couple of disclaimers here. One is that these do not necessarily accurately reflect final selection of materials. Material selection is something, for instance, the precise color of brick is something we'll continue to study and explore, and is best done by looking at material samples and photos of those, and we'll continue to work with design review and with Philip throughout the process too, once we're at that point. So one of the key things we worked on were the definition of the dormers and the simplification of this east facade. We're showing two options. Each one has an option for the treatment of this portion of the facade, and each one is slightly different for the treatment of the dormers. These two are combined into option A and option B, but they could be pulled out separately. So in option A, you can see the facade emphasizes these townhouse volumes, and these brick spandrels at the balconies are pushed back. And you can see that these dormers have sloped roofs at the top. In both options, the rear facade, like a mansard, is sloped. So sloped towards Mount Vernon Street, sloped towards the pond to help mitigate the scale a bit, creates an interest there. And then what changes you'll see is the framing of the windows and the height of these visors on the windows. So option B, this wall gets infilled. It simplifies this facade a bit, creates a bit more shadow for these units, but calms down the reading of the facade a bit, a little simpler. And you can see up at the dormers, rather than the sloped roofs with these lower visors, those visors get higher, these roofs get flat. And this is a close-up of the same option A, looking at these recesses and the lower visors and sloped roofs, and then switching to the infilled spandrel with the flat roofs and the higher visors. So again, landscape is, the shape of the path is here, but we haven't yet incorporated the planting or even the grading by Copley Wolf. So there you'll see inconsistencies between their plan and ours, which aren't yet worked into the model. So this again is the 3-story reading, and this again we're showing option A and option B. So this is the sloped roofs, the lower visors, and then the higher visors and the flat roofs. So these we showed last time. We just have in here for reference, really the best way to understand the relative heights of buildings to the adjacent buildings in town. Close-ups of these elevations, which we can come back to if anyone has specific questions. And then because there were some questions about the floor-to-floor heights and some higher floors at the higher floor-to-floor heights at the upper levels, this has been expanded to explain the dimensions of the setbacks on the east side and the floor-to-floor heights. So because we have added these two setbacks to have these outdoor spaces and mitigate the reading of the building height, that creates a need for one additional foot of space at the third floor and fourth floor to accommodate the thickness of insulation at these decks, the roofing and the decking itself. So it's adding some thickness above the structure, which would be shortened a bit to help limit the height of that sandwich. But this allows us to maintain a 9-foot ceiling at each floor. We're up to 9'4" at the top floor. So this overall height is what we showed last time, 62 feet to the roof level, another 2 feet of parapet. And we are showing 8 feet currently for the mechanical screen, which is what you've seen in the 3D model. So let me stop sharing and Dylan can quickly pull up the model and show you what we'll be sharing by the end of this week for you to have access to.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. So as David mentioned before, we'll plan on sharing with everyone a PDF with some instructions on how to navigate and control the model, dropping the viewer into a couple of select views from which you can walk along streets and hover over and kind of orbit the digital massing model. And again, we've rendered this model more so for massing comparison with the rest of the town. So you won't find any materials or colors that'll be refined later in the design review process. So to start, we've just tested out a couple of views, one of which is a perspective dropped into the site, one that you're familiar with looking from Mount Vernon towards the east, and another view which will be more kind of an aerial model view looked at through an orthographic viewpoint that we can jump into. And so we'll be providing links that you can access directly from your home computer. And I have those open here. So again, it'll drop the viewer right into the street to navigate. And on the bottom here, there's a bar to help describe ways that you can move about the model. For instance, you can walk and you can control kind of where you're looking with the mouse key, left and right. There are ways to, I guess, hover above the ground plane if you want a higher vantage point versus dropping down at the ground level. And so from here, you can really walk up and down the street, turn around, view the model from different vantages. And also you can change the time of day. For instance, if you hold the shift key down on your keyboard and the right key on your mouse, you can move from morning to night to look at shadows. And so this might be helpful to adjust as you're navigating around the site. And so in some moments you might kind of hover or fly above surfaces, but you can always drop down to a street level. For instance, here's roughly where our view from the Main Street Bridge is taken. You can look around and use this to compare the massing to neighboring context buildings. And so this is kind of what we have in mind for one view. Another view may be more of an axonometric view. So as if this were the site model, placed on a table that you're looking downward at. And again, you can rotate around this model with the mouse. and you can pan and even zoom in closer. And we find that this kind of viewing is also conducive to shadow studies as well. So again, you can change the time of day and look at shadow studies. And again, you can also use a view like this to drop down into the model and look at from the street view or different elevations. I should note that in this kind of view, where you're dropped directly onto the street or sidewalk, you're essentially at 5'6" at eye level. And so some of these settings, which get a little more in detail, you can actually begin to control. For instance, if you wanted a taller eye level or different camera angle, and those are found on this left tab under settings. But we'll be outlining those options for you when we provide a more detailed PDF.
Interactive and controllable. Right, Sally? And hopefully better than a physical model. I think that it's really an amazing new tool. So
it's a rabbit hole.
You asked for it, you got it.
Okay, so that's really a very nice tool. Is that pretty much the end of your presentation?
That's it. And I'd just like to add, I know David mentioned this, this model is of course stripped of any trees or landscaping, is really kind of rudimentary, as well as landscape design around the site. And so I guess bear in mind those, the progress of the model as you're navigating around the site.
Hey, Dylan, this is Sean over at Copley Wolf. I might throw one other thing while we're kind of looking at this, kind of in addition to the landscape, obviously being refined and evolving and kind of catching up as well. I would kind of mention too the slopes on the banks along the water's edge too. We've got a series of like 5 or 6 sections that have been developed to kind of walk through those, get a better reading of the grade, the topo, the bank edge, and those walkways as well. So that'll all is being refined, and we'll definitely have some of those to be able to discuss with the design group tomorrow as well. But those are once again being refined as well.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very educational. So why don't we very quickly go to Philip Shen, our design consultant. And Philip, I guess one of the big questions we have is how much more, we're looking at, the board is very concerned about the minimization of the mass so that it fits better in with the context of the of downtown. And so the question that I think I know I have, and hopefully some of the other board members will chime in with their own questions, is how much more is possible, do you think, from design? Have we reached the limits of what the design team can do in terms of minimizing that? And then overall, how do you feel about how things are going?
Well, thank you, Dia. Maybe let me start by answering your second question first, and then we'll go to your first question. I think maybe one way to just kind of summarize where the design is by going through some of the concerns that I heard last time at our from the planning board and how the team has addressed them. So I think that one of the main comments was about the consistency of the the 3-story reading of the building, particularly as the details wrap around the corners. And I think the team has done a good job of getting that consistent reading all the way around the building. I'd say that, there were a couple of options that were presented last time, primarily around the northwest and the southwest corner, and now in the design, the board, majority preferences are integrated into the design. The entrances, the additional entrance on the corner at the northeast corner has been added to the commercial space. There has been a lot of work, and you see a couple of options now about reducing the boxiness of the dormers at the 5th floor level, as well as the issue of just addressing the roof profile there. So I do think that the design team. Oh, one thing which David you didn't mention, but because we just went through the I think the 3rd and 4th floor plans, or the 4th floor plan quickly, is that I Ching did have a comment about the location of the 3-bedroom units. Last time we looked at them, they were just, kind of consistently at that prominent corner, that southwest corner. And now the team has added more 3-bedroom units. As I understand it, this is going to be a discussion with the housing board, but there was a concern about the attainability of some of the 3 bedrooms, and so the team is looking at that as well. So I do think that the team has addressed many of the comments. Now to your, I think your first question is how do I think that the design is going forward? I think in those 2 options around the articulation of the east facade for the kind of townhouse reading of that elevation, and I think they're interesting directions, both of them. And there are 2 separate issues, as David said, that don't necessarily have to be matched in the way they are in the options right now. I do think that the continuous, I guess I call it the continuous profile where there isn't the setbacks of those porches is probably a little bit simpler. It matches the Mount Vernon elevation a little bit better. It gives a little bit more room for those actual porches on the 4th floor. I think it still does maintain the kind of the separate reading of each of those units. I do think in the penthouse, and I'm sure we can go back and look at them, but between the 2 penthouse options, I think that the sloping of the back surface to get this sort of mansard reading, I do think that is successful in terms of bringing down the overall scale of the building. There is one option for the dormers where there's a lower visor. There's one where there's a higher visor. The lower visor has a sloped roof right there at the dormer. I think that one tends to read a little bit smaller in terms of the overall massing. I would just, maybe point the board toward those 2 options when you're considering the overall massing. I don't know if that answers your question, Dia, though, whether everything has been done that can be done. I think a lot has been done, and I think it has gone. There's been a lot of development, and to address the board's comments since last time, there probably can be some more work in terms of simplifying some of these details, especially up at that level, which might in course also bring some of the scale down. But I think it's gone in a very good direction since last time we saw it. Does that answer your question?
You're muted, Diab.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that sort of sets the stage for the discussion. I hope that the board will enter in now. We have, just for timing issues, we have 40 minutes left this evening. And so what I'd love to do is to have, to go around the board and to have them talk about their concerns and how their concerns might be mitigated, and to have, Philip, if anyone has any particular questions of you, to see how you would respond. And then also, I think if each member could express an opinion as to what type of dormer and the articulation of the balconies they are interested in seeing, just so that we can get some sort of consensus. So I think that I know if we give each person, say 4 minutes, that's, with a little bit of time for exchange, then we will have time to come back together and discuss. So if someone wants to go first, or I can start off while people get a chance to gather their thoughts, that's fine by me.
All right, I'll get 4 minutes. I'll keep time.
Okay, well then I'll just jump in so everyone can consider their thoughts. So in terms of the dormers and the balconies, I did like the more mansard shaped dormers, and I like the more articulated balconies. I thought that they gave the that facade a little more visual interest. I think the big question in my mind, again, as I'm sure in most everyone's mind, is this FAR of 3.0? And I know that there is some concerns, say, from the Concom, and other people have mentioned concerns about the view shed. And so my position is that I am fine with the current height of the building. I would like to see it to have a smaller footprint. I don't know how much that's possible. It certainly will dip it below up to 3.0 FAR, but I certainly don't want to see it go any taller. So if there is a concern about, if there is a view shed concern that's raised, then I think we have to work within the existing height. One of the questions I have, so I think the design is going in the right direction. I don't have any concerns about that. I think that the use of the what's been going on with redefining the upper stories, I think, is going very well. To get away from design, because this is sort of a catch-all for what we'll be talking about. I know that the commercial unit, there is some sort of parking required for the commercial units, and I don't understand where, how that's going to be handled. If there is customer parking or employee parking, how is that going to be handled on the site? I know we haven't talked about construction. That's a really big concern of mine, how we're going to handle that. And I really want to make sure, and I know this is something Housing Partnership Board is going to be looking at, is that the distribution of the deeded affordable units is spread equitably around the project. And that's something I hope you've started looking at. I don't know what DHCD will be saying in terms of whether it needs to be located in the penthouse floor or not. That's a conversation with DHCD. Of course, we will condition our approval if we get to that point on meeting all of DHCD's requirements. And so those are my concerns, and that is, I have a minute left, and I've already asked Phil my question, so why don't I pass it on to the next person? Who is ready? No one is yet ready to speak. Kurt, go ahead, please.
I think it's easy because I actually think virtually all my comments, really mirror yours. I think that just to start with the dormer piece, just to pick off the low-hanging fruit, I mean, I agree. I think the more sloped mansard, kind of less tall canopy is definitely more successful at trying to, again, scale down the size of the building and make it feel like a roof line as opposed to something that's, tall and boxy at the top. And I also preferred the articulated like balconies. I actually thought it just made that side of the building feel a little less monolithic. It just made it seem a little bit smaller to me, almost, I guess. So that's those two. And then I agree with you. I don't have an issue with the height of the building. I think in particular, I don't want to see it go any taller. I agree with you. If I wanted to see it shrink in any way, it would be on the footprint, and particularly on like the river sides as opposed to the Mount Vernon and Converse Place sides. I think that those two streets lend well to like building right up to the street, which is consistent with the rest of town. I think that feels right to me. I think it's the other two sides where, we're along a body of water and sort of a public bike path and access point. It would be nice to have more breathing room there and, some more sight lines and whatnot. So at the risk of taking up more time being repetitive, I mean, I think I generally overall agree do you have with the other concerns you cited? You know, how's construction going to be phased? How's that going to impact town? Equitable distribution of the affordable units across the unit types is important as well. So you said it well. I don't have anything else to add.
I want to say excellent, but that would imply I'm talking about my comments, but your comments are excellent. So the next one, please. Who would like to go next? Cheryl, are you up for going next?
Certainly. And I to say I'm wanting to stick to, larger issues, and both you and Kurt covered the ones that I would want to make sure that the design team understands we have in front of us going forward. I think that they've done a really wonderful job of looking at options that with the clarity that Diab and Kurt had about option A. I think that it's you've put forward something that is helping us, and hopefully the community will see this too, helping us really look at a building that is both part of our future in terms of its size and massing, but also has the kind of detail and articulation that is elegant, can stand next to our town hall at the same time as start to breathe new life into some of the buildings that are not as precious to us. So on both sides of, on Mount Vernon, we're looking at, a squashed little box that I don't think anyone necessarily feels attached to, but also something very special for all of us in our Winchester culture, the town hall. And just seeing all of the massing, having people be able to go into the model and really explore different views of the building from the town hall side, from the street. I think that this is something that is going to be very successful. So I know that there are smaller design things that will come up as we go along, really looking, getting into true schematic design and going forward. But I'm really happy with the results. So I too am a proponent of option A, and would like to say thank you to Philip and the design team for doing a great job.
Thank you. Yi-Ching or Sally?
Sally had her hand up, so I'll follow Sally.
Oh, go ahead then, please, Sally.
You're muted, Sally.
It would be helpful to have the images that are the presentation on the screen, and I can just kind of go through my thoughts in sort of a somewhat linear direction. So perhaps starting with page 3, let me bring this bigger. The northwest corner, I would actually like to see more of those Juliet balconies on the Mount Vernon Street facade, looking at the language in the central business district and even in the CBD regulations that there's a lot of reference to animated facades with balconies and plants and so on. And it's a very evocative image, and it's an opportunity to bring just another layer of beauty to the village. I am very happy with the second commercial space entrance at the northeast corner. So there's actually 3 entrances on Mount Vernon: commercial, residential, which is great. I do have comments about the radiused corners as we flip through, and the 3-story reading. And um, let's see, yeah, if we skip through the aerials. Here. Okay, so yeah, this is a good place to stop. So the sheer facades going from the first floor to the, from the street to the top of the fourth floor, to me feel still monumental. And what I would like to see is more setback above the third floor. I would like to see a little bit more expression of the, what's it called? I had the word in my mind earlier. This bar that goes across underneath the fourth floor windows. It's called a, cornice. Thank you. I'd like to see the cornice more expressed. And you'll see here on this image above the entry, the residential entry door, there's a couple of those Juliet balcony railings. That's what I was talking about when I was saying about, the opportunity for them to be more a part of the vocabulary of the building. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about keeping it simplified. My concern is when it's overly simplified, it makes it more massive, more monumental, more monolithic. And if you switch to the view of the riverside facing the town hall auditorium, let's see, there we go. I actually do prefer the sloped mansard roof and the sloped roofs of the, I guess you would call them dormers. And I do prefer, is this considered the more articulated view? Is that right? This is the one I would prefer. Yeah, so if you go to the top, this is option A, and then flip it back, option B, option A, B. Right, so this one feels more massive to me. It's just the extra depth of the framing trim around the dormers and so on. There's one image of this side of the building. I think it's number 30. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, 27. This one. This is it right there. Go back to 27. There. Maybe that's it. It just feels, there's even another view looking from the town hall. It feels still chaotic. I am not comfortable with the boxiness of these third floor dormers. And I notice in our design review standards that one thing about dormers in town is that, and this is more to a residential vocabulary, but I don't know how much it can be incorporated here, but the dormers roofs don't align with the main roof. They are somewhat below, and dormers faces don't align with the face of the building. They are somewhat in. And I don't know that these are expressing well as dormers. Like the one along Mount Vernon Street, that's a continuous run of windows that is dormered out from the mansard. That to me feels less chaotic and more simple. And having that, and then having the fourth floor step back from Mount Vernon Street, to me would be a good thing to do.
Sally, if I could interject, you
I'm
are
probably out of time.
You're a little over 4 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll just have to come back to my other thoughts after other people have finished.
Okay.
Should I go, Dieb? Hello?
We're going to say yes. Dieb, you're still muted.
Yes, yes, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that the design has come along really well. Thank you for mentioning, Philip, but I want to go back to the 3 bedrooms again, and I saw that they have increased from 3 to 6, and I think that is a great thing. If we could have DHCD, deem one of them affordable, I think that would be a huge win for the town to have an affordable 3 bedroom unit. And again, the equitable distribution would be good too. I saw that there was one 3 bedroom that was not a corner unit, and I would be disappointed to see that be the affordable unit, because I think that there should be some more naturally occurring affordability by some distribution of some of these units throughout. So that would be a good thing. And I think, you know, for the big question of the 3.0 FAR, it seems like the units are sort of at its maximum depth to be really comfortable. And I would like to see it shrink in square footage, but in the footprint. But I mean, to get it bigger or to flatten it out or to take a floor off would just seem to just make it unlivable without sort of a courtyard scheme. So, you know, I appreciate the plans. They look nice. And, you know, to have a 1-bedroom with a 1.5 bath is a pretty good deal. I think that's amazing sort of planning. So the housing part of it for me would support the 3.0 FAR in terms of the distribution, the equitability, the diversity of housing that the town needs. And I think that, you know, the 1s and 2s and 3s are definitely everything that we need, as well as the affordability. So I appreciate that the building is packed with housing, and the location of the retail spaces are great. One thing that I really would be concerned about, and I want to bring up, would be sort of the sustainability, but not only that, the sort of the resilience of it. As Cheryl was saying about how this building could sort of lead the way in its massing and its articulation and sort of beauty of the object of the building itself. I think that this project could be a great way to lead the town in its resilience and in its way of building housing. I think that's a huge win to build more housing in this town. And I think that adds to the resilience, but the lead building of it, the way that the landscape is maybe, you know, working with the Conservation Commission to get it into some sort of native plantings, the investment in, you know, alternative transportation, the bikes, the electrical stuff, the parking is great. I think that, you know, that electronic parking has been seen throughout cities in Asia, here in larger cities. And that's a great way to usher in sort of a kind of de-emphasizing the role of cars in our town. And then if there's more investment in some way of making the sidewalks more, you know, bike and walking friendly, and just, you know, bus stops. I mean, I think things like that would just really usher the town into a whole new, you know, place. And I applaud a lot of the design, and I think it's good. I do side with Philip on the sort of the more simple east side facade, and the mansard roof, the tilted roof is definitely a better version than before. So that's probably 4 minutes.
That is 4 minutes, yes. Yeah, I'm still muted.
Okay, great. So we still have 20 minutes left. And I think at this point, I know, Sally, you had a few more things you wanted to say. So if you could do that in 2 minutes, I would, and then Cheryl has her hand up as well. So we'll do Sally and then Cheryl, and then open up discussion if we want to bring in Phil, if you have any questions for Philip or for the developers. And then we will save hopefully 10 minutes for our schedule and other things like that. Okay, go ahead, Sally, please.
So one thing would be, I noticed that there's a fairly small bicycle parking room on the first floor of the building. And I know just in my house, we have more bikes than people. And I would think that for a 46 unit building, is that where we're at now, I believe, that you could imagine easily 46 bikes, possibly even 60 or 70. And I have no idea what the standard measurements are for a bike storage capacity of that. I know the building where our daughter lives has a really big bike room. So I put that on the table as part of the sustainability discussion. I also think that the pond side commercial space is actually negatively impacted in its viability by the reintroduction of the fitness area. And I would encourage conversations with retail design specialists to validate the viability of that space. It's really important that it be viable, of course. And I think I really want to go back to the notion of every time on every facade that there's a continuous 4-story wall without a step back. It does not mitigate the scale. And if it were stepped back, it would mitigate the scale. So I think I speak specifically of the 4th floor as you travel around the building. And also I want to reemphasize, I still think that the 5th floor dormers are very boxy and harsh looking, and I'm just not there with them yet. The building height. So I heard you say that the mechanicals will add 8 feet to the 64 feet that we're at now. Is it 64 feet 8 inches? So we're coming up to 72 feet. Help me out here.
It's actually 8. So the screen we're showing is 8 feet above the roof. The roof is 2 feet below the parapet. So the apparent height of the roof screen is 6 feet.
6, right.
We need to, once we have a mechanical engineer on board, verify. We're not going to need that height consistently. We sort of put it there to start. The hope would be we can bring down portions of it. There's really only one piece of equipment that would be that tall, which we've presumably located near the center of the enclosure. So we're going to work to sort of modify the profile of that and bring it down, step it down where we can. But we wanted to set it at 8 feet so that you could get into the model and understand 8 feet above the roof or 6 feet above the parapet, how visible is it from different points around the site.
Yes, I agree. And that's really helpful that as your clarity about the dimensions of the rooftop mechanicals come to you through consultants and so on, to have those input into the model. I'm assuming the model will be sort of not a static thing, but as you get more information, you'll be updating it. And then when you click into it, I, as a user, I will get a more recent view. Is that right? And then let me just very quickly, because I don't want to hold up the meeting. So I don't know. I spent 2 days looking at all of this, and I wanted to make sure my thoughts were concise. I guess it's the sheer 4-story faces that I'd like to mitigate.
So Sally, I'd actually like to address that. First of all, thanks for your comments. On the retail portion, we do a lot of retail, so we could absolutely show you some scenarios for, let's say different 2 or 3 different kinds of retailers that could theoretically use that space and how that would be laid out. And I think that would be something that we would normally do as part of schematic design to make sure that the space was, workable for a number of uses and so forth. But I think that, your question prompts that. On the subject of the sheer 4-story facades, of which there are some in town already, I think that it may seem a little counterintuitive, but one of the ideas is to have an interlocking of 3 and 4 stories so that there isn't actually a very relentless line that goes around the entire building, because in my experience, a true wedding cake building that sets back everywhere all the way around actually feels more massive. And so what we're trying to do by having 3-story sections and 4-story sections where we feel that the 4 stories can be handled is to actually break down the volumetrics of the building in such a way that it doesn't actually feel like an enormous pancake that is like stepping, and stepping and stepping. And I, obviously would love to, get Philip and other people's comments on that. But I understand the instinct of why that comment comes to mind, but I just wanted to express to you why we did it the way we did it. And so just to
And the
It
only
wasn't-
other,
it wasn't
and I
without
appreciate
thought.
that, David,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I also think that with the question of view sheds,
So
and,
Sally, could
no, I'm
we-
sorry, I'll just stop.
Yeah, we can hold on to that thought. Let's go to Cheryl. Cheryl had her hand up, and then we have 15 minutes or 10 minutes after that. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, am I, okay, I'm good. So I just wanted to, since we are lucky enough to have Sean Sanger here from Copley Wolf, that we discuss maybe a few things that we might want to see from his group, since we have to be doing some updating with landscaping. And I kind of wanted to reflect on some of the things that we've seen and how we might address. What's wonderful about the building is the diversity of the different programs, and on a site that has it has a lot of program. So we have a bike path that we're interfacing with, sort of a commercial outdoor space, which none of our restaurants or commercial spaces in Winchester have that kind of opportunity on the pond. And then we have sort of the redevelopment or invigoration of Converse Place, which will hopefully not be too much of a trash location in the future. And I know that there are a lot of older trees in Winchester, so I just kind of wanted to get your feedback. I want to say that I love the steps that you've shown in previous schemes. I think it's kind of the people steps on the pond as opposed to where the birds hang out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, finally people get that opportunity. We get to watch all the birds do it, but I think that just has a lot of potential, but it's also a safety concern, honestly. So developing that in the right way, making sure that it's accessible with maybe a ramp opportunity somewhere along the way. I don't know how you might develop that edge of the water. I know you talked about the fact that you've surveyed it a little more carefully in terms of the slope there. I noticed.
Yeah,
that
we do, Cheryl. Exactly.
that's
So we
kind
do
of
have the topo. That's great, and that's been a
Great.
really good tool.
Oh, fantastic. So anyway, those are my comments. I think, the drawings that we've been looking at so far really accentuate the building. But going forward, there are two sides of this building that will have the natural sort of tree scape of this part of Winchester, as well as the village side. So be great to hear from you and maybe get everybody to kind of maybe give you one or two things that they really hope to see. So for me, it's the steps.
Okay.
And understanding the program interface of the bike path and the residential entries for those live workspaces, which is really unique to Winchester. And I think that is just something that people are gonna get really excited about and gives us something new.
Yeah, no, this is really helpful, and this is great to hear, Cheryl. I really appreciate that. I mean, I just not want to belabor this because I know we're on a kind of a tight time frame here, but certainly just briefly the steps. I mean, I think we were kind of thinking about the lawn that you're seeing in the rendering at the moment. If you can imagine that kind of from the building face with the seat wall, the lawn, the walkway, the path, the multi-use path that you were describing in the steps, once again, kind of detailing all of that so that it really reads together as kind of a really nice, honestly, public space. And it's really in keeping of the other really great civic spaces you have along the kind of little pond there. So I think getting a little variety in scale to be able to do that in this particular little node. And then what you're starting to see a little bit just north of the larger tree, the willow, likewise, is some more of these kind of overlooks. What we're really trying to do, I think there's some great interpretive opportunities, but some also little pause moments, and not having those all be kind of a similar size, scale, and detailing. to once again really kind of I don't want to call it activate, but it's creating those places for people to honestly enjoy the water and the architecture across the pond. I mean, it's an amazing space down there. So just to kind of really build upon those opportunities to get off the path and to be able to kind of pause and enjoy the space while you're there, and just doing that and as I said, in a variety of scales, kind of detailing and materials. But to continue to have that dialogue and hear from you guys on those kind of spaces would be wonderful.
Do you feel like we have the depth of landscape on that side of the building between the water and the residential entries?
I think that's one thing we're going to continue to study, obviously with the team here. But we have pulled together, and I apologize they didn't kind of make it into the in today's presentation. But we have started to look at those in sections to get a better read on the slope along the water's edge, because it definitely varies from like 3-to-1 to more like 2-to-1 in some places. So there's some play there. But yeah, I think we're trying to create kind of that meandering pathway to take advantage of some of those spaces and to build upon those. So yeah, this is kind of, thank you, David, where we're kind of starting to get into the detail with the survey. So we've got, quickly 5 of these that we've run. This being with the building on the left, we kind of have that pause moment, then we're kind of sloping through that treed bosque area. We've got some fine tuning grading we need to do, but then you've got the multi-use path. It's a little bit wider here because we're starting to flare out as you're getting closer to Main Street. And then we do have the kind of a nice gentle 3-to-1 slope that obviously we're going to continue to work with the group on the Concom as well as the Arizona initiative, really about that edge. And the next one kind of cuts through the lawn. With the trees that you're seeing are kind of in the background, but kind of this nice kind of pause gathering space that will obviously continue to refine and develop. But you can see kind of a cleaner, simpler little planted zone, if you will. And I think that's texture and richness and layering and fragrance, all of that seasonality is really important to kind of build onto the space. And then as you can see, we're going to continue to develop the stepped component there. And I think your point about the accessibility is really important, and how we basically really get a really inclusive space down there is really important. We'll continue to look at that. And I think if we continue to walk around, this is some of the play I think we can do. We want to be able to talk with the broader group about how much of that sloped edge could be manipulated. Maybe some of it's a little bit shallower, but those are all questions we want to be able to have. But you start to get some nice planting buffers, and this is probably the tightest one where we move that path a little bit closer to the building. 6 feet feels a little tight, and the 14 feet feels a little big, but I think those are all proportions we want to think about from a human scale. And I think that 3D model will really help us look at that as well and kind of get a better read as we get into the detailing there.
Yeah, I think that, that's the one thing that if I think back about what Diab had to say about the footprint of the building, that I think we're going to be really looking very closely at the success of the bike path and the public space on the pond, in order to make sure that we're, the design team has done an amazing job with the massing of the building, but are we compromising any of the public space in terms of that very special edge of the pond, facing our culturally our most prominent buildings.
Absolutely. And those are really key pieces. I think the ability to have those kind of pause moments that you've got the circulation you were describing, but likewise, those abilities to get off and just scaling those appropriately and making those all a little bit different as well are really important pieces of the puzzle to really, I don't want to use the word activate, but I do think it's all about the sight lines, the color, the texture, the green, and the ability to really take in the water and the space that you're at downtown. It makes that really special. And I think we should just capitalize on that and build upon it.
Yeah, and not hinder people really trying to take a bike ride too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I realize now I've been holding my hand up, but because I have this silly background, my hand has disappeared. So I can't signal you if you can't see my hand. So I've been wondering why no one's noticed my hands are up, but okay, yeah. So I apologize. That went on. I lost track of time and my hand was invisible. So we are now at 2025. We have another 5 minutes in this hearing. I think the important thing, we have 2 things in front of us. One is we need to set a date and time to continue this hearing. And I think one of the things, I don't know when we'll start getting our comments in from the other boards and from the other consultants. I presume that they will need a couple of weeks. That's what our plan was. So do we want to meet in 2 weeks? We have a really tight schedule in 2 weeks. So one option would be, I mean, we do have things to talk about in terms of what sort of other concerns, what other mitigations or conditions we want to put on. Does the board want to, or the problem is if we wait until March 1st and we hope to have a decision by March 8th, that doesn't give the board a lot of time to discuss things. On the other hand, we don't have all of the input from committees and consultants probably for another couple of weeks. We have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks on the 15th. The week after that, I believe, is vacation week, and I believe there was a feeling we would not be meeting that week. So what are the board's thoughts on when we take this up again?
Well, I would favor meeting weekly until the vote.
Okay, that is, do we have any other feeling about that?
I was kind of wondering when we might see an update from the landscape architect.
Okay.
What's reasonable actually for having that come into play?
Carol, I think that's an interesting suggestion because as I'm sure you know, we can't really turn very much around in a week in terms of showing progress. So maybe there's some way to stagger some of the conversations so that we are making progress, but not coming back to you without the kind of advancement that you're expecting.
Diab, do you think we'll have any of the other boards comments by next week or by the end of this week so that we could consider them next week, or should
Brian?
Yeah, so
sorry,
design
Brian.
review, design review is meeting tomorrow. And the consultants are generally on a 3-week time frame in terms of if there's going to be some type of response from them based upon the current design. So the idea is that we would have a full picture by March 1st, but at least we would have the design review committee by tomorrow. At least the meeting will have occurred, but not the consultant, not Tool, not VHB.
But we want to release today's design to the consultants for their analysis, correct?
Exactly. The idea is that it would be used for the basis of a decision of some kind.
And Housing Partnership Board is meeting next week. And Ellen Spencer from Design Review Committee has her hand up. Ellen, you are muted.
Yes, sorry, I needed to unmute. Yes, since we are meeting tomorrow night. Obviously, it takes a few days for our recording secretary to get the minutes out for us to review, and I would think you would have something by next week, but whether by Tuesday next week, I don't know, but certainly by the end of next week. So I just wanted to, but that doesn't help you. I think so. I think you'll probably hear from us before you hear sounds like from many of the consultants. So.
Yeah. So I think, so at least I'm going to, on the safe side, let's say design review will be available at the earliest by the 15th, as would the Housing Partnership Boards, because they're going to be discussing it on
the 9th. The Partnership Board is meeting on February 9th.
February 9th, thank you. You can add 7 and 2 better than I can. Thank you.
Sally has her hand up, Diab, and then
I'm sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, Sally.
That's okay. Just one thing, coordination for Sean and his team. I remember seeing that the stormwater outfalls or some important stormwater outfalls are located where the overlook and where the steps are. And so I just want to encourage full coordination with engineering drawings on that regard.
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. I appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, we'll definitely be coordinating with the group so that it is a fully coordinated site design. Absolutely.
So I think it's sounding like the earliest we would want to meet would be in 2 weeks in order to get some input. We do have a scheduling issue that we have to talk about then, but if that's the earliest we can do it, then let's schedule it for the 15th. And we would schedule it for 7:45 again. Continue this until February 15th at 7:45. Can I get a motion to that?
So moved.
Okay, so Iching moves. I think Kurt came in a fraction of a second later as a second.
I'll second it. Yeah, there you go.
Roll call vote is, let's start. Kurt?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Iching?
Aye.
And Diab says aye, so we will continue it until that time certain. Thank you all very much for being with us. Thanks to our consultant Philip Chen, everyone at Ed Meliora, and everyone who came on to this for this part of our agenda this evening. It's some amazing work, and we look forward to seeing you all again on this for this in 2 weeks. So
Thank you very much.
thank you all. Everybody have a great evening if you're leaving us now. Next on our agenda is we have a couple of ZBA petitions, and then let me make sure I know what's actually on the agenda here before I say anything. Brian, are you putting up our agenda? Thank you. So we have 2 ZBA petitions, and then we will be going back in executive session for the town planner's annual review. And okay. So Brian, do you want to start us off on our ZBA petitions, please?
Sure. So the first petition is 14 to 16 Oak Street. This is a tear down and rebuild outside of the existing footprint, also known as 3.5.7. And it's also seeking a special permit under 3.5.5 in order to, because the property is non-conforming due to lot area and frontage. So there's an existing duplex there now, and they're trying to tear down and put a new duplex dwelling. They'll be located.
Brian, are you showing us anything other than the agenda?
No, not at the
Okay,
moment.
okay.
Yeah, I wanted to note that in my memo, I had put that the Historical Commission unanimously voted that it's a historic resource, and that they unanimously voted that the proposed new structure has a similar scale, rhythm, and character to the prevailing house in the area, and recommended favorable action. This was a mistake in the fact that the planning board did not actually recommend favorable action. I can bring up their vote, which I think is important. But basically, they deemed it a historical resource due to a number of reasons, and then had a discussion on what they could do. Essentially, if it was a demo, if there was a demo permit, there's a reason that this actually did not go in front of the Historical Commission for a demo permit, because at the time when the preservation, Chapter 14 bylaw of the preservation of historically significant buildings, otherwise known as the demo delay bylaw, when it was enacted, there was a one-time opportunity for properties to opt out of the demo delay. This was one of those properties that was able to opt out. So when they applied for this, typically they would have to go through a demo delay. So the Historical Commission had discussion about essentially viewing this as if it was a demo delay. So they basically voted that they should hire that the ZBA should hire a 53G consultant to document the resource. Yes, I can bring that vote up if people have any questions about that, but I just wanted to make that clear. My take on it was that it allowed the fact that the new duplex that is, instead of it being side by side, it's front back. The Historical Commission felt that this was in a very similar rhythm of the street, and I agreed. It's also within less than several inches of where it was originally, of where the current structure is. So it's about the same front setback, and I felt that the scale of the proposed structure was in contact with the neighborhood. So back to you, Diab. Yeah.
Somebody, please.
Yeah, I just muted them. So, yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that was my take. I felt that the Historical Commission got it right in the fact that that the replacement home, although is a historic resource, that if it did go through demo delay, they said that this potential petition, like I said, is within similar scale and character of the prevailing neighborhood. So back to you, Diab.
Yeah, could you put up that Historical Commission vote? If you could?
I will get that right now. Yep.
And just to clarify, so are there any, while you're doing that, are there any comments from the board on anything other than that? And if you...
Sorry, and I believe there is we've already gone through this petition, but I think there is a mistake in the number. I believe Laurel Hill was actually supposed to be first, but since we've already gone into this petition, but let's, as we go into that, make sure those petition numbers are correct in terms of which one was first. But we are talking right now about 14 to 16 Oak Street.
Mm-hmm.
So the motion by the Historical Commission is here. It finds that the proposed replacement improvements constructed in accordance with the plans and specs and design drawings presented in the commission at the meeting is generally in keeping with the historical makeup of the neighborhood. In addition, the Historical Commission recommends that the building be more fully documented using current MHC methodology that must include photography, drawings, physical description, and additional research to produce a written narrative of its history and ownership, use, and occupancy. This study should be undertaken using MGL 53G, which basically makes the applicant pay for this. This is something, this type of B form is just for curiosity is typically around $500. But I guess it could be more, but it's not like something that's, $1,000. This should be undertaken under MGL 53G to enable the employment of the Board of Appeals to hire an outside consultant to complete such a study. So those were the two votes to clear that up from the Historical Commission. Back to you, Diab.
Did do we have any input from design review?
They meet tomorrow.
Okay, so we do not have their input.
Not at the moment, yep.
Okay, board members. Do we have, I Ching, go ahead, please.
I just find this case interesting because it seems like it's, a very old house, and it is a, old two-family home, so it's like built as a two-family. So it has the facade really indicates that with a very distinct two-family sort of entrance. And the change application is for, again, a two-family, which is, I think is a great thing that it keeps that kind of housing type. But it looks like a single family, which is interesting to me that, it's, I just don't know if that's a significant loss in some ways. And I'm not in the Historical Commission, obviously, but like, it seems like it would it changes sort of the nature of the street in some ways. And I get that the units themselves are a lot more functional in that you can have a separate entrance for both units now. But that housing type in particular just seems like a real, like a kind of a relic of the past. And I'm not sure if I had that challenge to continue to make it more modernized version for as a two family, that would be the, that would be the solution. But it's just an interesting thing for me to see that, this is such a housing type, and then to sort of alter that, even though it's of the same scale and proportion as before, it's just curious to me. I can see that difficulty in trying to figure out how to allow this, or what to preserve here.
Okay, thanks. Someone else?
Yeah, I just had one quick question or observation.
Go ahead.
The only observation I had of like the new design, and Brian, I don't know if you can, oh, perfect. Actually, you're on the page. I was a little confused about the roof line stepping up in the back, and I'm assuming it is because maybe they want to be able to accommodate the underground garage in the rear, but I think the elevation from the street for that reason is maybe a little misleading. Like I think you're going to see like a roof line and then a second halfway back, like another like trim board. Basically, it just seems a little bit odd to me, the roof line stepping up. I'm not saying I'm a design expert. I'm just, I guess, questioning the need for that and whether or not that really, takes away at all from, the street level aesthetic, just having that stepped up roof line. So it almost looks like, something like a roof was like stapled on top of the other roof halfway back.
Sorry.
So you want to be on the side elevation drawing, right?
Yeah. See how it just jumps up like a foot?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's hard to tell, I think, from the street level elevation, but I think you're actually seeing like a bump up, and you'll see like a white trim board above the roof line where that happens is my guess. I'm just wondering why, I'm assuming, again, it's because of the elevation for the garage perhaps, but it seems to me like it would just be cleaner and more elegant if it was just one roof line. But
Or have them flipped, have the front taller than the back.
Or have the front taller, exactly. It just seems a lot.
Yeah, because that would be a really long. Huh.
That's interesting, but I think, as you would see it like in a oblique view, so you wouldn't ever see sort of that thing, but as an elevational drawing, it should be represented. But also, can I mention one more thing as I'm looking at, is that like the new design is a gable end facade, whereas, the prior design was sort of the roof slope is expressed. So it just seems like a very different design to me altogether, even though it's in the scale of the previous.
Well, it's interesting, Yicheng, because I think that one thing that maybe is successful that ties to the point you're making is that they, at least in the rendering, they have the staircase from the front porch going down on both sides, which almost does like mimic what it looked like originally with like the two entrances coming from the side. So if you were trying to still capture some of that, two-family aesthetic originally, if you thought that, if the Historic Commission thought that was valuable, I think they sort of, helped, address that a little bit by keeping the two staircases.
Yeah.
Sally, did you?
Well, yeah, there was one thing I found in the drawings, because I found on plan 3, which is the lower level, the foundation plan, my eye was drawn to area of 6'11" ceiling height. And I got to looking at what that was about. And I discovered that on one drawing, which is page 1, drawing 1, the top of garage slab is to the, I guess that's the joist height, is shown as 6 feet 8 inches. And then on another plan, which I'm trying to find now, it was listed as 7 feet 8 inches. And that could just be a drafting error, but it's important because that might be where the discrepancy in building heights is coming from. And the reason that's important to me is because there is something that is incredibly charming about the previous era's more diminutive scale to residential structures. And I would love to, I would like to know how much taller and how much wider, and I couldn't get it from the drawings, this building is from what is in the historic photograph. And also with regards to the historic photograph, Brian, if you could bring that up, there's some architectural detailing that I'm not seeing in these design plans here. Can you bring that?
So Sally, is that a question you want to ask? We do have people from the proponent here, I believe.
Right, so here's the drawing. This is the picture that I'm looking up. If you can just pull it down. You see the returns below the roof there? That is, and the strong corner boards. That is a very strong vocabulary in this era of housing. And I don't think that I saw that in the other house, the new house. And so it's the vocabulary of the detailing. It's also, and to I Ching's point about turning the roof facing the street to the gable facing the street, I do think that the design could work well on the street as long as it's not disproportionate to the other historic buildings. And that's why I was asking very specifically about dimensions.
So we're already off track in terms of time here. So why don't we, so I have 13 of 9 and we only have 13 minutes left in this segment. So why don't we ask the proponent to answer your question about the dimensions of, in particular, it was the height above the parking pad, the garage pad. Was that your question, Sally?
No, it's the height of the building as perceived from the street, and to Kurt's point about whether the higher roof in the back will be visible, and it's the width of the building on the lot. That what I see all the time in neighborhoods is that new homes go in where old homes were taken down, and the new homes are disproportionate. And I don't want to
so we just want to look at the footprint of this building. And Mr. Murray, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to answer your questions and to make a presentation.
So very quickly, sir, just the specific question.
Yes, so we do have a plot plan that shows both the existing condition and the proposed condition, and that does show the width of the properties and the length of the properties. And the total square footage actually in the existing property is 3,172 square feet. And in the proposed property, it's 3,484 feet. One of the reasons why the property is set up the way it is because the owner of the property, who has been a Winchester resident and has owned this property for many, many years.
Mr. Murray, you have 1 minute, please.
Okay, I just want to let you know it's not important for your consideration, but Kevin O'Donnell and his wife, who are elderly, are going to be moving in there with their daughter, who has been a Winchester resident all her life in her family. And it'll be nice that they'll be able to spend that time together. I know that's not a consideration for you. That's why they built the house the way they did. So it's back and front instead of side and side.
Right. So in answer to the question is the width of the new building commensurate with the width of the old building?
I would say it is. If you look at the drawings, it looks like the side yards are pretty much the same, and obviously the lot is the same as it was. So you can see that from those drawings that the width is. I'm not an architect or a person who can read these drawings well, but I'm looking at the side yards.
It's a difference of a half a foot.
Right, and my question was also about the height. So it's the width and the height, and I can see the width is very close, if not even slightly more setbacks, but it's the height that I was concerned about.
So, Brian, if we can look at the elevation very quickly, I think the height is in the elevation that you showed. The side elevation, I think, showed the height. So while Brian's looking for the height, are there any concerns from the rest of the board? Is there a motion to act one way or the other on this? So there's the height right there that is from the back, I believe.
It's 35 from, but that's I don't believe that's average mean grade, but it's
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's relative to the structure that is the historic building.
well, we don't have as-built plans for the building. While I don't know if we can answer that question right now. I'd like us to move on. If are there any other comments from the board?
Hey, Dia, the only quick comment I was going to make, maybe for Sally's benefit, is I think if you go back to one of the renderings, it looked like the house, I think either right next door or fairly close, looked like it's a house that has almost like a full height third story that looks actually quite a bit taller than the existing house. So, I mean, in terms of height, it didn't jump out at me that it looks like it's out of scale for the neighborhood based on the photos that were presented.
Okay.
My only question, Diab, was whether or not it looks like they're paving much more of the site and also covering someone's got their funny picture in there. You know, the coverage of the site has in terms of, has engineering taken a look at whether or not, oh, sorry, Brian, you're right there.
Brian Mantor is here. Brian?
Yes, Joe, yeah. So the amount of impervious surface on the site does increase by 1,440 square feet. But they propose to offset that increase in impervious surface by capturing the runoff from the new
driveway in the back or whatever, or
I know Brian's
Oh,
been
he
having
froze.
I know Brian's been having some connection issues. But I can share his memo, which might be the easy if we want to go there.
Was that not part of our package?
It was sent out. I don't know if it should have been part of the package, but I can certainly share that right now.
I think
Sorry
it
if
was
I
set
missed that.
separately, but we do have it. It was hard to find.
Yeah, I would just say I would just say that that's also part of how the house presents itself to the street, is that now with the two entries and one being all the way around the back, that it's kind of setting going from a sort of more of a green environment up front to really just more about access. There's no side yard any longer, from what I can tell. Which is kind of, I think that's unfortunate, but I can understand why they're doing front and back. It's just it's pretty awkward.
So any further discussion on this, or do we have a motion one way or the other on this?
Can I just have a clarification about what it is that we are to either vote on or decide or do?
This is
this is recommending favorable or unfavorable action. This is not a planning board permit. This is a ZBA permit. So this is where we would typically, if it would be a positive vote, it would be a positive vote with or without conditions. And if there's a negative vote, sometimes the board would explain why it's negative, but those are the options.
Purely advisory.
Correct.
We haven't done one of these in a while. I recognize that.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little rusty.
So the board can also choose not to make a decision. This is also our choice. I think Rush said that.
I do have the assistant town engineer's memo in case if that's needed, or
I would like us, we've already spent 25 minutes on this, and I could have sworn we were going to spend it no more than 10.
Yeah.
So
I recommend, can I make a motion to recommend favorable action? I don't know if anybody wants to add conditions, but it's
okay, we have a
I
motion.
think it's, yeah.
I would add a condition because the design review committee has not yet reviewed this project. Is that right?
They will be doing it tomorrow night.
So the condition that I would add is something about that I would want the design review committee's concerns or conditions to be included in the final outcome. I don't know how you do that.
I would say that without knowing what their actual conclusions are, I personally am uncomfortable saying that I agree with them.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
I mean, I did not, yeah,
You're right.
I think we can say something though. I mean, you wanted it to, I know you had comments about reflect more of the, I know that the design actually does say corner boards, but reflect some of the design aesthetics, or well, I don't know what you want to call them.
I think I called it vocabulary.
Vocabulary.
I don't know how to say it. I feel very sad about the loss of this house, and so I don't know how to say what.
Yeah. Any other conditions that we might want to put on this? Otherwise, we have a motion and we need a second. We're kind of going out of order here, but that's okay. Is there a second for this motion?
I'm sorry. What was the I guess I'm a little hazy on the condition. So it was a motion to approve with a condition of what?
To reflect more of the vocabulary of the existing structure, of the design vocabulary of the existing structure. That was, I think, one of the things that Sally was reflecting on the loss of that.
Right, and also, well, I guess that's the thing. I'm just very sad.
No, sorry. Point of, I guess there's a point here. So right now, the only motion on the floor is that I Ching made a motion for favorable action, and then that is all. Then there could be a discussion and other conditions put on, but at the moment, there's only one motion on the floor for favorable action.
Yes, sorry, I am getting out of order. So we need a second for that motion, and then we can discuss. And I don't hear a second.
It's just really hard to second favorable because it's, I just have to say, looking at the drawings and the materials, and this is going to be a vinyl house with a porch or a balcony on the second floor. It's an awful design. It's really unfortunate. So I can't support favorable action, but I don't have a vehicle to be, to move this differently, because it's not that's not what we do, right?
The board does not have to take action on this. So there is someone, I believe, one of the people does the board want to hear from Beth Stecky, who is associated with this project? Or does the board just want to move on? So whoever has that microphone on, please turn it off.
Yeah, do we have enough time for the other things that we need to cover? So maybe we just move on and we work on things that are
up to the board. I mean, if the board, no one has stepped forward to second this motion, so this motion is essentially dead.
Thank you.
If the board does not want to, if there is no other motion on the table, then the board will take no action, which is within our purview. We can say we're not taking an action. We don't have to provide it's an advisory only. So if there is no other motion on the floor, then we will move on. And I really do not see much enthusiasm for another motion. Is there a motion to oppose for unfavorable action?
We don't have any oppositional options here. The building is opting out of the demolition delay. And I think our responsibility is to approve, if I'm not mistaken, a special permit to build a structure on a non-conforming lot.
Yes, but it's specifically that the new structure is outside of the existing footprint.
Right.
So it's not only the fact that it's non-conforming. So
we do.
You still have the option of you have an option of recommending favorable with conditions, just favorable, which didn't work, and there's also recommending unfavorable action. Those are the options.
So we do have a cheat sheet that we use that I'm afraid I don't have readily available, which goes through all of the reasons we come to our decision, and they include things like massing, scale within the context of the neighborhood, historical resource, things like
here. it says,
My
the
reason,
further
I'm sorry,
criteria.
to make favorable action would be that there are, it's 2 more units of housing that is livable and will be, is catered to units of residences. And I just, in some parts of this, it might not be a design issue for us anymore. It's just, can we just allow people to build?
I mean, yeah, so if you look at, Brian's got them up. So community number 1, community needs served by the proposal. We have nothing against that. Traffic flow is not an issue. Utilities, and that's not an issue. 4 is the big one. Impact on neighborhood character. Is building form material compatible with prevailing scale and character of buildings in the neighborhood? Our architectural features add visual character to the neighborhood. Number 5, I don't think that's an issue here. Number 6, impacts on the natural environment. Certainly we can say something about if you're concerned about the increase in pervious surface, whether or not it's a question of, there's certainly water runoff that you have to worry about, but the loss of green space has, there are other reasons for wanting to maintain green space rather than just water runoff issues. And then impact on historic resources, number 8. So I think there are 4 criteria that we could make comments on here. And so it's up to the board to decide whether they want to make any comment or not.
So this was really helpful. I appreciate it. Sorry, but I would say that it fails in adequacy of proposed screening and buffering. You're now on both sides of a house, having a public way or a front door at the back of a house and a front door at the front of a house, and 2 people with cars, as many as 4 cars entering the other side of a house. That's not within the character of that neighborhood, from what I understand. But I do realize, Yicheng, what you point out about providing more housing. I just think that having the rear entry, so one house on the front and 1 house on the back, is going to impact it's going to impact the neighbors negatively. Even though I agree, I'd like it to be 2-family home, in increased housing. So I would say the natural environment, number 6, and number 5 are both, as well as number 4. All 3 of those are, I would say, are not adequate. Is that the right word? That they should be considered.
Well, you can say that it has a negative impact. That
Right.
was the language.
There we go. Okay.
Negatively impacts, okay. Yeah.
So again, mindful of the time here, is there a motion?
I would make a motion to, what is it, reject? What's the word?
It
Sorry.
would be recommend unfavorable action.
Right, there we go. I recommend unfavorable action.
And you're calling out the, Brian, could you bring those up again, please?
4, 5, and 6 are not met. Are not adequately addressed in the design.
There are negative impacts on 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Can I add another part to that?
Why don't we just do this, as Brian pointed out earlier, by the book? We have a motion. Let's vote on the motion and then discuss it. All right, let's get a second. Let's see if we even get a second, because
I second that. I second what Cheryl said.
Second. So very quickly, Sally.
Number 8. I know that it's just oxymoronic that to say that it doesn't have an impact on a historic resource, to tear down a historic resource that was allowed to go into a state of dereliction over the time of its most recent ownership. So I would say that I would vote for unfavorable action on this, because tearing down this house is a complete impact on a historic resource.
So there's a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so why don't we vote? First, we need to vote on the motion to amend. So roll call vote. Who's around? Sorry, Kurt?
Motion to amend. Aye.
Okay, so okay, yeah, we're not at the same motion yet.
Okay.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Yi Ching?
I haven't said no in a while, so I don't know how to say it, but is it
You
no?
can just- it's just-
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. we won't mistake you for a horse. And I will also vote against. So that is 3-2 against, or 3-2 in favor of the amendment. And so now we go to the main motion, which is unfavorable action. Recommend unfavorable action based on negative impacts to 4, 5, 6, and 8.
And this is for petition 3954.
This is for petition 3954, which is
14 to 16 Oak Street.
14 to 16 Oak Street. So why don't we go around again? Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Aye.
Kurt?
Nay.
Sally?
Aye.
Yi Ching?
So nay to unfavorable action, right? So nay.
Right. And I also vote nay. God, I sound like a horse. I'm sorry. So we have a vote of 2 to 3, so that motion does not carry. So we have, I guess we're done, unless there's another motion.
I'm confused about if a motion for unfavorable action fails, is that the equivalent of a motion for favorable action?
No,
No.
not at all.
Yeah, it's not the vote. It's a vote that will be. I mean, it didn't. I think it will be transmitted, but someone could even say that because the motion failed, there's nothing to transmit. But I think I think the board would transmit that vote.
We are not in approval, but we are not in disapproval, or something like that. I don't, it is what it is. I understand I feel the way you are, Sally. I don't know what message it sends, but.
The message it sent is that a favorable action did not occur, and unfavorable action did not have a majority vote. That's what happened.
Yeah. So we no motion was passed. So the board did not effectively take a stand on this. Okay, so I think we need to move on. Thank you everyone from that project for being with us. We are now, let's deal with the next one. I think we're going to have to postpone no, we'll do what we can. Let's move on to the next one. Brian, you want to set this one up?
Sure. This is, so sorry, taken out of order. Michaela and David, you guys should have gone first. My bad.
Okay.
So this is for 21 Laurel Hill Lane, and is not related to anything that is being built on the site. This has been triggered for site plan review due to a grade change, due to in the backyard and subsequent creation of several retaining walls to attain that flatter slope that they're looking for, to use more of to make more of the backyard more usable. The Laurel Hill Lane neighborhood is, not surprisingly, very hilly, rather steep slope as you travel east up the street from Sunset. There's many kind of on the lower side, under 4 feet. retaining walls and some that are actually much higher retaining walls that can be viewed from the street along the frontage of many of the houses. Churchill Road, which is to the north, is very similar with some very large and some other small retaining walls. I think the biggest concern here is really kind of minimizing the height of the retaining walls is and the use of the retaining walls appears to be appropriate in terms of looking at a lot of the other a lot of the abutting neighbors as well as ones up the street. Living on a street that steep, it's not uncommon, but and something that would match the front retaining walls makes good sense as well. It's really that 8 foot, and it's sometimes maybe even a little bit more than that 8 foot and maybe creeping into 9 or even higher of portions of that rear wall that may be larger than that large white fence to the abutter. So I really kind of just recommend minimizing the height of the wall, if at all possible, to that same or similar height of that rear white fence. The sides of the property appear to have retaining walls that are already that wouldn't necessarily affect those abutters, but I really think that if there's anything that can be done on those larger 8 to almost 10 feet wall really could be minimized, that would be my recommendation. Back to you, Deanne.
So let me, I will jump in first just for the heck of it. So the 8 foot wall, I'm afraid for me is a no-go. It's just too large. And we've had some very successful redesigns of retaining walls, which were that high, and they were redone to be lower. So, I mean, it's just massive. I think that something that would really help in the presentation of your proposal is to show us what the height of the wall is at all points along the gradient. Right now, it's really hard for me to understand as I walk along the back of your property what the actual height is. So I know it starts low, but I couldn't tell. And that would be very helpful. I know there are some views where you essentially you wrap the wall around in 2 dimensions and you show how it slopes. But if the 8 foot, I think is just, I mean, 6 feet is what we consider to be typically the maximum height of a fence. And we really don't like retaining walls over 4 feet. So at 8 feet, for me, it's a bit big. So I will now pass on to the rest of the board.
Can I add?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the concerns I have is what was just said about the 8 foot high wall. I also want to point out that there's a lack of coordination, consistency in the shape of the wall from the drawing S1.0 and I don't know, some other drawing that's in this package. Sometimes it appears as going straight and sometimes it appears as curved. And I think that should be clarified. I also want to ask the question about the requirement for handrails. I don't know the rules in the Massachusetts building code, but I believe that if you have a drop off, and someone needs to check on this, if you have a drop off of more than 30 inches or something, you have to have railing or protection from that falling over. And the third thing I have to say is about the trees. There's trees on the rear abutting property whose roots are right on the property line, in fact, extending into your backyard. And I just believe, again, an arborist should be consulted that 21 foot and 18 foot oak, their roots are underneath that backyard. And when you dig the footing for that proposed retaining wall along the backyard, you will cut those roots, and somewhere between 3 and 7 years, those trees will die from that thing. So I don't want any more trees in our town to die, a premature death. So that was the thing that I thought of also. So handrails, wall height, and impact on abutting trees. That's what I had.
Okay, thank you. Sally, you still have your hand up.
I know, I'm trying to lower it.
Okay.
There.
Thank you. I Ching, Sally. Oh, gee. I Ching, go ahead.
All right. I also agree that the 8 foot retaining walls are a bit much. And so the sort of terraced idea, I think would work a lot, might work for you. And it just really kind of making a slope, I live on a slope site too, but like making that whole thing become flat is just seems pretty unreasonable to do to the land. But also there are definite ways to mitigate that and to make it useful to still. So I encourage you to look into those other options.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl or Kurt?
No, I really don't have any comments. They've all been made. I'm in agreement with.
Okay. Kurt,
I don't have any comments.
do you agree or disagree with comments made?
I think so. I mean, this is my first time dealing with a retaining wall. I think so. I'm learning a little bit from my peers here. I think it sounds like the 8-foot piece makes sense to me. That's a little bit high, and especially consistent with prior practices and whatnot. So I think I agree with that piece of it. That maybe there's an alternative where you can lower some of the scale on the height to make it a little bit less tall.
Yeah. And just to clarify, it is a 2-tier wall of 4 feet and 4. So it's not a single 8-foot wall, just to clarify.
Yeah, there is some, yeah, so
Right,
that's.
so yeah, let's make sure we're talking about the right things here. Good. So David, you're talking about this 2-tiered wall of an upper
Yep.
wall, lower wall. Yep.
Right, and I think we're talking about the height of the wall as it appears to the neighbor to the rear.
To the rear or to the downhill?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's to the west. It's to the west here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also must approach that size in the rear as well.
Right, in the corner, the upper left corner of this
Yeah.
image.
So that was actually where I was trying to measure off of the so this is, so are you saying there is no part of your wall which is 8 feet tall?
Oh yeah, no, it's going to be 2-tiered where I guess where you were talking about the white fence to the left side. So the reason why our landscaper, Ray Booley, he wanted to do the terrace 2-tiered, so it wasn't such like a massive wall. And then in between on the landscaping plan, he's going to be putting in trees or plants, I should say, to kind of make it more aesthetically pleasing. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the top of the upper wall is at 92 feet. And if I go outside of that wall, it looks like we're at 84 feet. So right where the upper wall meets the back wall, let's call it, it is going to be about 8 feet tall.
Right. Yeah, that is where my 8 feet in my memo came
Yeah.
from. So,
So-
yes, it is terraced, but in terms of where I was more of the viewpoint of it will from 84 to 92. So that's where my
Also,
and-
there's a mistake in the cross section number 3 on sheet S1.0.
I can get to that. I also see that Assistant Town Engineer Brian Manter has his hand up as well. I'll get to the S1.
Okay, Brian, go ahead. Sorry. I missed-
Yes, yeah, guys. I just wanted to if it's okay to share my screen because we do have some of the profiles and they do show a cut section. And David is correct; they do have the terrace wall design. But Brian, is it okay if I share my screen?
Is this not in our packet?
I believe so.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and show it?
Let me know if you can see the screen okay.
Not yet.
No.
Nope.
Nothing.
Oh boy. Okay, I've been having technical difficulties, but
Brian, can you pull up S1.0?
Oh, now it's going.
Is
Looks
it-
like it's just taking a while, but yep, that is in the plans. But yep.
okay. Guys, can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So this is drawing S1.0.
Yep.
And what we see here are these things indicate like a cross section. So this is detail 2, this is detail 3, and this is detail 4, the cross section.
Right.
So this is that detail 2 that we saw at the top. And so Dia and Brian, you're correct in that wall on the north side abutting, it does have an open face of 8 feet 3 inches. But the total height of the wall looks like it's up about 10 feet tall.
But it's 8 feet above grade.
Above grade, right?
Yes, exactly. And then the cut section for detail 3, which is right here. That's, I think, the 2 terraced walls that you see. So that you can see here that the above grade face, the highest height you see is 4 feet. And then cut sheet detail 4, which is down here, is similar. It's a face of 4 feet tall. Yeah, I hope that helps clear up the.
No, it doesn't, because detail 3 doesn't make sense to me that the 2 walls are the same height when in your plan, the wall, let's see, closest to the side neighbor is at there's a 4-foot difference between these 2 walls at the top of the wall. Oh, I know, it's on the plan right here. It says TOW, top of wall is 88 and top of wall is 92. So in cross section 3, they're reflected at the same height, and it's not what it says on the plan.
Yeah, I found that confusing. And also I should point out that the labels on those two drawings are incorrect. They both say 6 feet wall and they're both 4 feet tall. So.
Yeah, so there's just some drafting stuff. I also think that it's possible to grade a site like this a little bit more sensitively than it's been graded. I don't know how you do that. I would take a very skilled civil engineer or landscape architect and have them really work it.
Yeah, Dave, with respect to that call out, I think the 6 feet is, you've got the 4 feet face right here, and then the 2 feet under below grade. So the total height of the wall is 6 feet. I think that's.
Could you zoom over? Could you scroll to the left? And keep going. There's still no. And scroll down to the labeling on the bottom of the leftmost.
Right, I see.
So that says 10 feet, and that is indeed 8 plus 2. Okay, my mistake.
Yeah. So it's just a clarification.
So I think it would be really useful is to really have a drawing showing the actual height of the wall at every point along the wall, so that we know that it's 8 feet at one point. Where is it everywhere else? I mean, I recall there was a property we dealt with. I don't know if it was off Forest Street, where we actually went over it. We ended up with a very nice design, which they started off with. I think they started off with 10-foot walls, and they ended up with a much better design, which did not impact the property as much. So I think that, I mean, again, we are an advisory board only. So we're so just so you know, I think it would be possible. Any other comments?
Brian Mantor had his hand up.
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I took it down.
Okay. So does, with all of that, does the board want to make a motion on this? So our options are to say, yeah, we think the wall is a great idea, but we need to see, we would prefer that it be shorter, and that would be one of our, a condition on our approval is that making the wall shorter could be a condition. We could say that we don't like the wall at all.
I would make a notion. I'm looking at this site plan review section 957. No, it's site plan review motion options. This is a document from Brian.
Yeah.
And motion option 3 is vote to withhold endorsement of the site plan, and then we say why. Right?
Okay.
So we say why, because we feel that the walls are too tall and that the documentation doesn't give us enough information about the height of the wall at all its locations. Is that?
Sally, I think there is actually a criteria under site plan review which talks about minimizing height of walls.
Okay, let me see.
So here it is. So this is this is being applied for under 9.5.1, which is site plan review, and this is 9.5.7, which outlines the criteria for the decision.
And it goes down past number 9 to number 10 and 11 too. And so one thing that I was concerned about the trees, that is noted in section 3. There is one large tree that is being removed. And I don't know, Brian Zakeli, where
We're not removing any wall or trees, sorry, just to clarify.
the lower wall is right where there's a tree.
We're I don't know if it's just in the drawing, but that's not our plan, just to clarify. Like, we don't want to remove any trees whatsoever.
That's good. It's confusing.
Can I ask one quick question? Sorry. You know, in the tallest part of the wall, it meets a concrete retaining wall. So on the right-hand side of the plan, where your wall begins.
Right.
What is there? Hold on. Yep.
Yeah.
That's an existing concrete wall that's there. You could see it in the photographs.
So that's already retaining the
uphill.
Got it. So what's the connection between that wall and your wall?
It's just that our abutters have a retaining wall. So just for it to connect, I think. And when we were talking to our landscaper, he did mention that it may not actually connect all the way there. It just kind of depends on like how everything comes together. But yeah, the point of that being there is that that's just like our abutters already retaining wall that they have to retain their property.
Brian, I think we're talking about the right side corner of this drawing. Yeah.
Oh.
Existing wall to remain on the right.
Yeah.
And then their wall is at the back and they meet each other somehow.
And then I had a question on the same vein as what Cheryl was just asking in the upper left corner. If you look at the way the lines outline the shape of the back lot line wall, it looks like the back lot line wall overlaps and sits on top of the lower side lot line wall, the way the lines are drawn. And I just got really confused looking at that.
So is there a way to resolve that? Is that just
we just need what you suggested, Diab, which is more detailed drawings.
So
sorry.
Okay, so did we have? I'm sorry, I'm losing track of.
I could make a motion. I would recommend favorable action only if the terraces were farther apart from each other. I think that the terraces being apart from each other by only 1.5 feet or whatever it was just doesn't make it seem like it was terraced. You know, it seems like one whole wall. So I don't know how to make a favorable action for that, or if it's an unfavorable action based on the fact that the terraces are so close together. But I mean, I agree that probably that land needs some kind of terrace or some kind of retaining wall in order for make it more usable, but not in this way.
I think that would be, we could certainly say that, I think that comes down to unfavorable action, and that this would require a redesign in order to reduce the height of the walls.
Okay, so I make that motion then. I mean, I encourage you guys to come back to us with the redesign, because I think that you know, you probably do really need retaining walls there, but
so
I recommend unfavorable action.
Okay, so unfavorable action.
Just a point of order, Diab, in this document where it says motion options, it says you vote to endorse, vote to endorse, vote to withhold endorse.
Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Thank
So
you
this
for
is
letting
not
me
a
know.
special permit. This is
Site plan review.
Site plan review.
So
And
we,
just so we're clear, by the way, the typically the way that in Massachusetts, under Massachusetts general law, site plan review is not really contemplated. So it's the idea is that if we would be withholding in general, or at least recommending to withhold the site plan review, it typically is for the reasons for public health and safety and welfare in terms of withholding site plan review. It's different threshold from a special permit. This is just so a little bit of law here. So the
But
idea.
that's really interesting because the very good point that I Ching made, which is having to do with the notion of having the two walls farther apart, is that a public health, safety, and welfare issue? To me.
Well, you can get at that by minimizing cut and fill.
I'm just saying that if whatever motion that if it is to not endorse it, that typically the reason to hold site plan review, meaning it is not a discretionary permit like a special permit. But yes, site plan review has been denied in the past on a very rare basis. But in general, it is viewed as being related to public health and welfare and safety. But just as a point of in the past, the ZBA has denied site plan review, essentially saying that the house was too big, but then using, like Diab said, it's too much cut and fill. It's not minimized, for example.
Right.
So I just wanted some clarification there.
But we do have 11 criteria which we need to use in order to craft our decision. And
correct.
So health and safety may be some general principle, but there are 11 specific criteria that we have. And
so would it do if their engineer was able to come up with a plan that does more what I Ching is recommending, would that change the volume of cut and fill? Does anybody know that?
I believe it would, because you would be, if you move the terrace to the uphill side, then you wouldn't. I think that's a calculation that maybe we can't do here. I know that we have, in the particular one where I'm thinking about, where we did recommend or against endorsement, was they did have very tall walls, and they did an awful lot of filling in order to create a flat landscape. So we would, I would be, Brian, could you please put those up again? I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Yeah.
Right, so I recommend unfavorable action due to because of trying to mitigate or minimize the volume of cut and fill.
Okay, so we would say unfavorable because it does not minimize cut.
No, withhold endorsement.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Withhold endorsement.
Withhold endorsement. I'm trying to write this down so we can withhold endorsement. I can't spell anymore. Because it does not minimize cut and fill. And I would, if we get a second on that, then I have an amendment I'd like to, or something else I'd like to put in there. So is there a second? Okay, so we have a second. And so what I would like to point out is that, and I think this goes in with Sally, what you're saying is that the addition of a safety fence or some sort of structure on top of those things would actually increase the height. And this is because I'm reminded of what happened on this other property, is that the addition of the fence, which I believe has to be
48 inches, probably 42 to 48 inches.
So you're adding 4 feet to the top of the wall. So that turns your 8-foot wall into a 12-foot wall. So I think that is the addition of a safety fence, or whatever you want to call it, to the wall will increase it to 48, 4 feet plus 8 feet.
And Diab, is it allowed to add the other point that I made about hurting the trees in the back? When they cut the wall footings,
I
they're
think,
gonna cut the
I
roots.
think that we have to, that is a consideration. I don't know where it falls under. Brian, is there something about natural environment in there?
Yeah, I can get this up, but there is no it's
It's
talks
number 3.
specifically about removal, which there is no removal.
Yeah, so there's nothing in here which talks about the trees. I think that you could say that there's a concern, and that would be a separate thing to note, would not be as part of the,
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it
it's,
just,
it's not part of the yeah, it's not.
yeah,
Right.
it would just be a concern we could add, saying that, concern that about damage to trees in
The
neighboring,
tree roots on the abutting property.
to tree roots on a buttering, that to roots of trees on a budding property which extend into this property. So I know that it sounds like we're really raining on your parade, and I really don't think we want to do that. I think all of us think that your property does require something to make that backyard more usable, unless all you would do, is hope for snow and go snow sledding into the backyard. That's probably all you could do back there. So I think that there's just, I'm sorry, I'm again, I need some, this is a long day. So those are I would like to add that just the note that the addition of the fence to the wall increases the height from 8 feet to 12 feet. And so that is a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second for that?
I second.
Okay, so a roll call vote on that. Let me start. Kurt?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Yiching?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I say aye. So now on the main motion, which is to hold endorsement because it does not minimize cut and fill. And note that the addition of a fence to the wall increases its height from 8 feet to 12 feet if we use a 4-foot fence. Roll call vote on that. Kurt?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
Yiching?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. So I think, Sally, you're going to be writing this.
I will, and I can touch base with either you or Brian in the morning to make sure I draft it just right.
Okay, thank you. So we hope to see you folks back here. And thank you very much for your time this evening. I think that is, we are now past our stated schedule. So we were supposed to go and continue the Brian's review and executive session. So we have an issue now in that we need to get this done. And our February 15th meeting is pretty much full now because we have put in 10 Converse Place there. So what I would like to suggest is that we have a special meeting just to finalize Brian's review, and that we could have a meeting maybe in a week for an hour and a half and just finalize it, if that is okay.
It's okay with me. I think it's a good solution.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Kurt, can you manage that? And
Yep.
I think so. Okay, great. So I have started scheduling my pseudo 360 calls with various people. So I will be talking with them about stuff. And then Sally and I and Brian are meeting tomorrow to talk about the Master Plan Implementation Committee selection process to try to get that moving. So just so a heads up, I forgot to mention that at our updates this morning.
And the other update is that Brian and I have been partnering on trying to round up an available consultant for North Main.
Okay, right. Okay, we are 10 minutes over. I feel like we're about 2 hours over for some reason. It's just personally. So I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you for all speaking at once. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. I Ching,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
Sally,
I
Kurt,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. Thank you all very much. Thanks to Nancy Polcari, our
thank
recording
you, Nancy.
secretary.